Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Combating Cancer. My name is Gwen Kelly, and I'm your host. I'm so happy you guys are all here again, tuning in to listening to me chat. A little bit of background information about me is that I was diagnosed at 19 with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer. I created this platform because I wanted people to come on that are either in active treatment, remission, or have lost a loved one to cancer to share their experiences, because cancer is a terrible disease and no one fights alone. And the more information and awareness we can get out there, the better for everyone. So today I have Tiffanie Thomson. She has a very unique story. Both of her parents were actually diagnosed with glioblastoma brain cancer, and she's going to talk about those experiences of having her parents have cancer and talk about brain cancer in general and the startling statistics behind it. So hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Hi, Glenn. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I think we connected via LinkedIn, right?
Yes, I've been doing a lot of LinkedIn outreach and just trying to grow my network and meet a lot of people in the brain cancer community and nonprofit space, of research and clinical trial space.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get impacted by brain cancer, you realize how small the community actually is.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the moment that you meet someone, it's like you have an instant connection and you're like best friends all of a sudden because you have that camaraderie, like where you've both been through the same thing together. Right. And so the connection is just there instantaneously. And everybody is so wonderful and positive and hopeful. And the resilience is just incredible.
Yeah, I definitely say everyone that I meet that's been impacted by cancer in some shape or form are generally some of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. And you are right. Like, you click instantaneously and you're like, wow, I just gained another best friend.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
Why don't you share with the audience a little bit about your background and how everything happened with your experience with your parents both being diagnosed with brain cancer?
Yeah. So I guess going into this, I didn't know that much about brain cancer. I never thought about it. There isn't much out there about it unless you yourself go through it or a family member goes through it. When we received the news that my father was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, we were all, of course, floored and we're like, what does that mean? And of course, the first thing that you do is Google it and you get this terrible statistic with the GBM, but it's not wrong. So it really impacted our whole family. And we were just kind of going through it with my dad, just figuring out what that means. What are treatment options? What's now? What happens when chemo starts? Because if you've never gone through it before, it's a learning process. Each stage has its own set of challenges, both physically and emotionally. So it definitely took a toll on all of us. And that was back in April of 2022. And he passed away in April of 2023, about a year later after his diagnosis. And then shortly after that, my mother received the very same diagnosis in September of 2024, and she's currently in chemotherapy. So as you can imagine, both parents so close together with the same diagnosis was just completely devastating to our whole family.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say I'm so unbelievably sorry to hear about your father passing. Losing a father is just an unimaginable amount of grief and loss. I'm very sorry about that. And especially with your mother then having to endure the same thing, I'm sure that's been very difficult on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to say that I'm not special. Everybody will lose their parent. It's just so devastating. So back to back, and they're, pretty young, 63 years old. It's not the time that you start thinking about, oh, my parents are getting old and have to start worrying about that. So my father, for example, just retiring, live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and he is our local shop owner, had an auto mechanic shop called Whitelaw Auto that everybody in downtown Raleigh used. And so he knew everybody and he had worked there his entire life. And he was finally going to close up shop and retire. And I was so excited to be able to spend more time with my father. I was thrilled. I was like, oh, cool. We're going to have more beach trips. I'm going to get to spend more time with him and get to know him more as a person now that he's like older and in retirement and I'm older. It's different, when you get to that stage with your parents. And just after he sold the shop, he got that devastating diagnosis. And for him, his first symptom was all of a sudden not being able to read something. As you'll kind of learn and diving into brain tumors, depending on the location of the tumor, different symptoms can arise throughout your treatment and also at the beginning stages before your diagnosis. But oftentimes there aren't any symptoms. It might just be a headache and you're like, oh, great, I have another headache, but it's nothing severe. But for him, the reading issue with his first major symptom, and then he had a seizure. And then they did all the scans and rushed him into the hospital. And I think probably 3 days later, maybe 4 days later, he was in surgery and they were able to get the entire tumor out. But as we learned with brain cancer, the cancer cells are like grains of sand throughout your brain. And they're hard to pinpoint and find in scans when they're like that. But when they become a tumor, that's when they can actually see it in a scan and talk about surgery and treatment options and things like that. So whenever someone goes through surgery, they have to continuously go back and get scans and checked out because the cancer cells never really go away. And unfortunately, at this point in time, we don't have a cure for that.
Yeah, I know I shared my story with you a little bit, but obviously this is always hard conversations to have as someone that has brain cancer themselves. I wasn't in the same boat as your father where I was having vision issues. I was having a bunch of back issues and I did MRIs on my back, up and down my spine, different spots, and nothing ever came of it. And then one day I had a seizure like your father, and that's how they found it in mine. And it's just terrible. You don't know about brain cancer until it directly impacts your life. And then when you find out about it, it's even worse when you realize that there's no improvements in the treatment plans.
Yes, that was the thing that was most shocking to me was the fact that brain cancer is just rising in the US. And I think the statistic currently, and I can give you the links for the most updated statistics of where I'm pulling this information, but you can go online to any of the brain cancer site and see that over 1 million people in the US have a brain tumor. And that's scary, knowing that our only form of treatment currently is surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. And many of these brain tumors, including the ones like my parents have, the glioblastoma, is treatment resistant. So if you have a specific kind, chemotherapy doesn't work and they still give it to you. And they say, oh, treatment isn't working, sorry. And that's the answer that you get when you go to the doctor. It's crazy because you go through this like whirlwind of emotions and you go down the rabbit hole searching online and try to find information, and it's hard to find. And there are all these great nonprofits around that you can eventually find, and they have a little bit of information about clinical trials or a new study that's going on here or some resources for home care or rides to your appointment, but you have to find it. And so I worry for the people that currently have brain cancer or people that are going to be diagnosed with brain cancer because we don't have any type of like one place for all the information, and your oncologist won't give that to you. You have to go find it yourself. And we don't have any kind of better treatment options or cures. That's definitely one of the things that I wanted to dive into to raise awareness about, because it makes me upset, makes me mad, frankly, as I'm sure many people feel the same way. Even if it's not brain cancer, any other kind of cancer too. But brain cancer particularly is the most underfunded when it comes to research and clinical trials, but yet it's the most needed. So it's wild to me. I say no one's doing anything, but all these nonprofits are absolutely working so hard and doing all the good work, including you and having this podcast and raising awareness, and with all the fundraising and stuff, it's just not enough. And we have to get the word out there and try to make change, some real change. One of the most shocking statistics that I wanted to share, other than the 1 million Americans living with brain cancer today, is that brain cancer is the deadliest form of cancer in children. And it actually has replaced leukemia as the most common cause of death from cancer in children. So these are kids under the age of 19 getting brain cancer. You think about like both of my parents, they lived a decent amount of time. They're early 60s. That's still technically young to me, and I feel like they had a lot of life left to live. But when we start talking about children, We're talking about they didn't even get the chance to get married or have a family or watch their kids grow up or even finish school or do what it is that they were here to do. And that was taken from them. And that's the saddest thing to me. And I don't know why we're still stuck with surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation when there's so many promising studies out there. The science is showing all of these incredible findings from research. We need to fund that. So that's definitely a major problem.
Yeah, and it definitely is interesting when you say that because I was diagnosed at 19, so technically I was considered childhood cancer. And that is something that I honestly struggle with. I remember when I first got diagnosed, I was really angry because I was so young and I felt like I hadn't accomplished anything I wanted to. And it's something that I still live with constantly after treatment and everything that, I live with this constant fear that if my cancer comes back, what if I'm still not married or if I have kids or I didn't accomplish any of my goals? But here's the thing, like it's scary no matter what age you're at. I remember there were so many times I would be getting radiation. I'd be sitting there and there'd be like a 4-year-old next to me riding in like one of those little bike things. And it's just heartbreaking because they haven't even hit double digits yet. It's heartbreaking. And it's especially so frustrating because it's like brain cancer is so impactful. And unfortunately, it's rising and so many other people are going to be affected by it. But like you said, there's not one solid place you can go to with all the information and resources you need. It's just terrible. I work with a nonprofit called the Brain Cancer Research Alliance, and we actually hosted a gala last October, and we're going to host another one in April 2026. And the amount of people that were in that room that had a connection to brain cancer was outstanding because when I got diagnosed, I felt like I was totally alone, but it's not talked about. So people don't know that there's that connection there.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know exactly what you mean. Like, I work with the Angels Among Us, which is a nonprofit that specializes in fundraising, and all of the funds go specifically to the Duke Cancer Center here in Durham, North Carolina. And they're one of the top cancer centers, I think, globally. A lot of people travel there, but I recently did an event as well. We did our annual 5K in April and we raised $2.7 million that went directly to research and clinical trials there at Duke. I'll definitely share a link with you to post for folks if they're interested in seeing all the new clinical trials and research there at Duke. We definitely want to share that information. But yeah, it's incredible when you meet all these people who are affected by it. And like you said, it's almost like there's a sad vibe in the room, but there's also a happy, hopeful, positive vibe. It's so weird. I can't describe it accurately, but there's such a connection there. All the people that are affected by the same thing as you, and you just feel that instant connection. So I love doing that kind of work.
Yeah, it can be very difficult at times. And it's hard to hear the devastating stories because, there's a lot, but there's also some outlying positive stories. And here's the thing, we all need to band together to raise awareness and money so we can have more of those positive stories because they say a clinical trial can be funded by $100,000 and all the research is there, but they just need the funding. And if that can just prolong someone's life for an extra year, that means everything to me.
Absolutely. It's totally worth it because that whole extra year means more time with their family, which is a blessing. There are people that, pass away every day from a stroke or heart attack, and you don't get to say your goodbyes. But when you get that extra time with someone, knowing that day's coming in the near future, it's like it extra special. Like that time that I got to spend with my dad that summer, we went on so many bike rides on the Greenway Trail near his house. We spent a lot of time together. We went shopping for hats together, and like it's different when and you get to get that extra time. And I think people deserve that. I think that's the short-term goal. It's getting the research there for clinical trials that can then turn into new treatment options that are available to everyone. And then the long-term goal would be the cure, right? That's like the ultimate goal is to get rid of this dang cancer,
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So kind of to bring back to a little bit about your relationships with your parents. Obviously, you went through this blind with your father the first time and then finding out your mother had it, how did you yourself feel? Did you feel a little bit more equipped? Because obviously, when you've never had to deal with cancer, you don't know what to expect.
Right. Yeah. So going into it, like you said, blind with my father, I was kind of going through it with him and researching online and learning things that the doctor told us. And I was just devastated when I learned the news about my mother. But I kind of went into it with that previous knowledge of I know what's going to happen now. So I can kind of brace myself for the stages that are to come. And I can give her advice on what the treatment's going to look like. And I went into it feeling like, okay, I've got this because I've done this before, but everyone's different is what I was reminded of very quickly. Even if it's the same stage 4 GBM and the same cell type and the same everything, the location's different. The person is different. How they respond to medications is different. And the recovery and complications from surgery is different. Like, for example, after surgery, my dad just basically jumped out of the hospital bed and I saw him cutting his grass. And I was like, what are you doing? You just had surgery on your brain. Why are you cutting your grass? You need to slow down. But my mom was very different. She had complications that led to more hospitalizations and kind of prolonged her treatment plan. And she finally did the radiation, had complications from that. And now she's finally able to do the chemo, but it would have been better to have it, kind of back to back, like the treatment plan usually is, but it was spaced out because of her other complications and stuff. So I was really bracing myself for the bad news, the scanxiety that you get, like, oh, they're going to get their next MRI. It's going to be bad because with GBM, it's a very aggressive, very fast growing cancer that spreads. And you'll go from getting surgery and having nothing to then 3 tumors that they can't operate on again. But in my mom's case, luckily, for some reason, hers did not spread or grow. And we were shocked, but also very excited to hear that news because that means more time. But everyone's different. Although I might have been more prepared emotionally, I wasn't prepared for the differences in everything. And yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your mom's tumor wasn't spreading or popping back up in different locations. That's amazing to hear. And I know before we hopped on here, we wanted to touch on different advice you had for people that have become caregivers. So I don't know if you want to dive into that at all.
Yeah, that's actually a nice segue, like the challenges that we faced and like the support systems, resources and stuff. I know here locally at UNC, there's a comprehensive cancer center that offers the additional treatment options, like outside of the standard of care. So we're talking like nutrition, therapy, exercise routines, just other things that make it like the full comprehensive package that, we didn't know about until later on. And Duke also has some wonderful programs there as well with their oncology team. They have nutritionists and stuff there as well. You find when you go through these programs and you have your doctor, your oncologist, like you're not provided all the information. And kind of like what we talked about earlier, you're on your own trying to figure things out and you have to ask for things and you don't sometimes know what to ask. So that's definitely a big challenge that kind of wears you out. We're constantly online researching. You find something, I'll send it to my mom's caregiver, my stepdad, and he'll read into it further and it's not going to work for her. Or this new amazing clinical trial is available, but she doesn't check the box for it because of the location. Or there's this new medication that is in clinical trials, but too much time has passed, you can't get in. So I think that also takes a toll on you emotionally. You just feel so worn out and so defeated. It's like an uphill battle to try to get additional options, to try to extend your time, to try to beat this thing as much as you can. And it's really challenging. And some of the coping strategies that I used, I kind of want to get into because the stress level is more than anything that I think you can imagine unless you've gone through yourself or a family member. And it's very unhealthy, of course, to just keep trying to go uphill and, face these challenges and keep going and you're exhausted and you're crying and scream crying in your pillow at night and then trying to keep it all together during the day at work and all this stuff. It's just so challenging to keep the emotional side of things stable and get through it. So some of the things that I did with my dad that I learned and then helped me with now dealing with mom, one of the first things I did is I called my insurance and found out that they had a behavioral health where I could get a therapist under my insurance. And all I had to pay was the copay, which was amazing because therapy is so expensive. But there are free options for caregivers and patients at a lot of hospitals. So I encourage if anybody is going through this, they need somebody to talk to. There are free options out there. But if you can't get to one of those or do it remotely, call your insurance, try to find an app or something like that. I'm telling you, it sounds ridiculous. And sometimes when I was talking with my therapist, I was like, why am I even doing this? But it works. It really does. It just takes time to allow yourself to feel comfortable to feel the emotion. That's the hardest part, I think, is allowing the emotions to happen. It's like, okay, I'm sad. I need to sit with that and feel sad now. A lot of people are like, shove it down and don't feel that feeling. And then aside from like just traditional therapy, I went online and Googled everything. I tried herbal teas to help me sleep at night. I did adult coloring books. I definitely drank too much at one point. I definitely fed myself too much at one point. Then I turned around and I got on a healthier routine and started going to the gym and walking a lot to exert some physical energy to help me with my emotional energy. And I learned a new hobby. And I think the hard thing is like getting through this, you have to go through it to get to the other side. Life doesn't stop. And you can go to that concert and have fun. And then the next day, not have a good day and cry. And that's okay. It's okay to live your life and it's okay to feel sad and it's okay to go through it. And then at the end of it, if you allow for these things to happen, your routine is healthy and you start to feel better about it, you almost get like a peaceful feeling about everything. It's kind of hard to explain, but that doesn't mean that it ever goes away. It never gets easier. It's just giving you a coping strategy to get through your day to day. Know when you're feeling a certain way, what you can do to get out of that feeling or to sit with it, just being aware and conscious of the present.
Definitely all of the different resources that you said. I wasn't even aware of some of those myself. And I'm a Google deep diver. So that's fantastic that you shared those. As well as, too, I think it's really important whether you're going through cancer or you're watching a loved one go through it, you need to talk about it somehow. You're going to have days where you're going to be so upset and paralyzed by the fear and the situation. And then the next day, you're going to be on cloud nine. And maybe 2 hours later, you're crying again on the bathroom floor. It just happens. Unfortunately, it's like these waves that you go through when cancer affects your life. Overall, I just think you are absolutely an amazing person. And the fact that you've been having to deal with this terrible situation in your life and you are still so positive and you've turned this into ways of how you can help other people so they don't have to go through a similar experience than you is so selfless because not a lot of people would do that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I just feel this spiritual motivation, obligation almost to help others because I know what it feels like. And I don't like that other people are going through it. And I want to help change that, no matter how small, whether it's one thing that I share about my story or a coping strategy that somebody didn't know about, or maybe just raising awareness about brain tumors and the different research that's out there, just inching that needle forward, to try to make a change and really advocate for patients and people dealing with this brain cancer. And hopefully we'll see some big changes in movement.
As long as we can help one person, that's all that matters to me. Thank you so much for coming on today and chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that is today's episode for Combating Cancer. Thank you again to Tiffany. I will link all of the resources that she sends me below in the bio. As always, please share this to someone that you think needs some extra encouragement or would need some additional resources to help them. And my door is always open. If you or someone you know would like to come on and be a guest, share your story, or want to be a corporate sponsor, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks so much, guys. I'll talk to you next Wednesday.